The only person that'll be listed as questionable will be Michael Hoyt. He's making good progress, so we do expect him to be able to play. And then Quentin Lake will be out again with his hamstring. He just got a little, his it's like the outside, more of his like IT band, just a little bit. We're just trying to kind of just let it calm down.
If he's not able to go, who then rotates in?
It would be O'Shawn and Keir Thomas would end up, getting more work, but there's no reason for us to think that he wouldn't be able to go. We're just erring on the side of caution because he plays so many snaps.
Had that missed the Green Bay game at the bye. How have you seen those 2 weeks kind of allow him to kind of get back to where he was before the injury?
I just think that he's done a great job being intentional about taking care of himself. He had a little bit of irritation, just in his knee, and I think that enabled him to be able to attack it, to be able to get off of it a little bit, to be able to do a specific and a strategic rehab program with Reggie, and now it's really being able to maintain that. I think he plays so many snaps, the style of play at which he plays this game. Got to be able to continue to, have a maintenance program for your body to be able to get through 17 games and hopefully play more. And I think he's continuing to do a great job of that. And when he's out there, he ends up bringing an element of energy, leadership, production that is really important to us.
I think I know the answer to this, but with Seattle losing last night, we've asked you kind of about playoff push and what. Did you watch that game, and what kind of were your impressions as it relates to how it affects your team?
It doesn't affect us really because we got to go play our game against the Browns. But I watch all those games, so I'm a fan of the game. I did get a chance to, you're kind of watching it as you're finishing up, your responsibilities. But it's a great back and forth game, a lot of flags. But other than that, nothing to add, Gary. Yeah.
Can you sometimes see when shifts are coming in the league in general?
I don't know about that. I think what you see are what are the consistent themes relative to the landscape of the league defensively, what types of plays, and sometimes it's the simple ones where you're just throwing a go ball down the field, but I think a lot of coaches do that because it's so easy to access good stuff, or you're looking at, somebody that runs a similar system, or you might be saying, all right, this team played a similar defensive coverage contour. And so if you're always just looking for different ways to stimulate ideas, and because it's so easy to access and because we got so many different coaches that know how to be able to identify the things that we're looking for, it does sometimes help with that. And then you'll see a lot of the, some of those plays that might be all purpose, if you will continue to kind of show up. And, mostly that's kind of with your gadget type of plays. But it's good just to be able to stimulate thought because there's a lot of great coaches around this league. And then, I enjoy just kind of understanding what's going on. No different than I like watching the games like what Gary was asking. That's kind of our way of being able to do it. And if it ends up helping us find a play that gives us a chance to have some success, then, that's great.
You can filter it instantly.
Yeah.
You couldn't used to do that.
Yeah.
How does that change?
Well,
What would it used to be like?
really, if you're talking about the explosives, it's always been pretty easy to be able to do that, because that's just general information that the NFL puts in the GSIS data. But the specific types of plays, whether it was a successful one or not, that some of the, the best things you might see are the things that don't end up working out, but you can see the intent behind it. But if you sort it by just the positive gains, that's the only stuff that you end up seeing. But now with the PFFs and all the different analytical things that they have that can sort it in a very strategic and structural manner. And then you got coaches that have a lot more efficiency than I do in terms of being able to pick and choose and be able to kind of just pinpoint the things we're looking for. It makes it a little bit more efficient. It's a delicate balance, though, because you can go down a rabbit hole where you're chasing a lot of things, and then you feel like it's never quite enough. And so being able to kind of know where exactly that fine line is something that I still haven't figured out yet, Jordan.
The point of the question is as technology has changed,
Mm-hmm.
the way that you guys are able to access and sort through information and have people who parse through different types of situationals, do you notice ideas changing and the league is able to change faster than that?
I think so. In a lot of instances, you'll see year-to-year trends, but you'll see in-season trends a little bit easier in terms of implementing those things. But I will say this, relative to my own experiences, I think when you're doing the work yourself, that's when you have the best ownership of it. I think in some instances, these things are so efficient, they create shortcuts that aren't really in alignment with building it the foundational right way. And I can just speak for myself. And so it's finding that balance of being able to utilize these things, but not sacrifice the work that's necessary to be able to do the things that are in alignment with the teaching, the problem solving, the intent, the mechanics of everything that you're trying to get translated to your guys. Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say it's a balance. I don't have quite the stamina maybe I used to. So.
Thinking about your work week and preparing for a game every week, when is your most stressful point of the week, and when is maybe your most fun?
It's a good question. I think, the early parts as you're really trying to, once you put the previous game to bed, if you ask people that have been around me, I'm probably the most irritable early on in the week, as you're really trying to figure it out, kind of put together a game plan, usually after today's practice, and then you get a chance to go home and kind of finalize exactly some of the things that we want to do relative to how we want to play the game as a team, but then, how do we want to try to sequence a game if it works out the way we want. Usually that ends up being when you start to calm down, I guess, or feel like, all right, hey, the guys are ready to go. And then you start to really just try to do as good a job as you can of using the time without overthinking it until kickoff. But early parts of the week are where I'm usually the edgiest. People leave me alone.
Is there a moment when you just say, like, I've done all I can and now we just have to play the game? When is that?
Well, the part of it that's the most important, Sarah, is getting the information to your players. So if there's something that's like we think it really makes a difference, I've never been afraid to add plays last second, but for the most part, Friday afternoon represents that. And then it's figuring out, okay, how can we consistently make sure without chasing ghosts that we're going to put our guys in the right spots and then ultimately go play the game.
The last couple weeks, you got big pass interference call when 2-2 went deep.
Yeah.
You had a connection last week. With him and with those routes, is that purely situational, or is there intent on your part to say, we're going to get him involved in that way this week?
Well, the two different situations, right? One of them was a early down play action pass where we had a 3-level throw, and Matthew ended up being able to identify that. He ends up getting over the top of a certain coverage that we were trying to attack right there, and he drew the long pass interference against Seattle. The other one, he's a backside individual in a 3-by-1 on a third down. He's got basically an isolation go ball. They basically, played a coverage contour where that can end up saying, okay, hey, this is something that ends up coming to life. Typically, you're not, loving inside release fade balls, but what a great job by he and Matthew connecting on that and being able to make a contested catch. So, yes, I think you want Matthew to play each play as its own entity, but to be able to see those types of things pay off is important for us. And whether it's caught or whether it's not, it still ends up being a good positive chunk for our offense. And so I think those are always important things in terms of hunting up explosives that any offense is looking for, and it's been good for 2-2 to do that the last couple of weeks.
And then kind of building on what Sarah said, are you ever really able to turn it off?
You've known me for 6.5 years. What do you think the answer is?
We see you here, but I'm just,
Yeah.
I know you're making a conscious effort. You're just like, I'm going to go home. I'm not going to. But in your mind, are you ever not on some level?
No, I'm always a
thinking about
basket
this?
case, Gary. No, here's what I would say. Here's the thing. I think there's ways that you want to be able to handle certain things, but it's part of like I am wired a certain way. I look at my little guy, right, and he's just sitting there wide-eyed when he's laying in his crib, and I'm just praying, oh, please don't be like me, man, where your mind's just always racing. But that's a good thing. I think that's naturally who I am, but sometimes the awareness of how that can be positive or not positive is the important thing. And then to try to be able to, still be authentic to your personality, but make sure that it's, handled in a way that is, conducive for whether it's being the best husband, best father, good friend, or, the best coach that I can possibly be. There's some things that you learn along the way. Now, is it easier to be a little bit more present when it's important enough to you? Yeah, it is. But Do I have to be very disciplined and have a lot of things that you're mindful of to try to do that? Of course, but I love what I do, and that's a good thing, right? But I do think that the best way that you can go about it is having that balance, because too much of one thing or the other, I don't think is the best way, and continuing to figure that out. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I got it all figured out, but I think there's been steps that are sustainable and are more manageable to be able to, do it the way that you want to, whether that's work or whether that's, being the person that you want to be at home. So we're making progress, right? That's all we can do, right, Gary? I've always tried to be able to learn it. I think there were some more tangible lessons that you're forced to apply it in a way that you're going through things, and I've shared with you guys some of the stuff that I wasn't proud of, but by no means was that stuff that hadn't existed before. I think it was just more exclamated because in some instances the results can cover it up, but the reality is you're still not handling things the right way or the way that you want on a consistent basis. And I think last year kind of brought it to a head where you got to be intentional about making sure that it's not just words and the actions are in alignment. And that's something that you want to try to do every day. Hey, how you doing?
Coach, how you doing, Coach?
Good.
What grade would you give your team right now?
It's hard to say a grade. Here's what I'm proud of is a lot of the challenges that we've talked about in terms of establishing a grit, a resiliency, continuing to move forward and handle every single opportunity as something to be able to learn from. I've been really pleased with that. I like the way that we've come off the bye. We've gotten some guys healthy. We've been able to win 2 games, but I think that's been reflected in different ways. And I think the good teams find ways to be able to finish out, find ways to be able to respond from adversity, and ultimately be able to compete hard through 60 minutes. Or if you got to go into a 5th quarter and play overtime, then whatever's necessary. But I want to see us continue to take steps. I think it's hard to put an individual grade. I think, the book is still being written right now, but I'm proud of, what we're in the midst of and what we're building, and looking forward to seeing how we handle, chapter 12 this week. Okay. Thanks, guys.